Did a CIA chief leave Moscow only for a deadly blast to strike a Russian military officer 2 days later? Just 2 days after secret CIA Moscow talks, has a deadly car blast shaken St. Petersburg and raised new questions? Did Zelensky hold back until Ratcliffe left Moscow, before a Russian officer was killed in a sudden car explosion? Is Ukraine testing Putin's patience with a double hit, after Donetsk was struck before a blast rocked St. Petersburg? From a drone maker to a general and now a lieutenant colonel, is a mystery blast trail growing inside Russia? After the CIA chief visited Moscow, a deadly car blast killed a Russian officer in St. Petersburg, intensifying concern over attacks against military-linked figures. On August 27th, a car carrying a Russian lieutenant colonel and his wife blew up, leaving the officer dead and his wife critically wounded. The officer served in the Russian Aerospace Forces, according to Militani, linking the victim to a force central to Moscow's war effort. The explosion occurred around 10 a.m. in St. Petersburg's Slavyanka neighborhood, near Kolpinskoy Highway in the city's Pushkin district. Eyewitnesses said the couple was leaving their home when the explosive device went off, reportedly moments after the car started moving. The Russian officer was killed instantly, while his wife survived the blast and was rushed from the scene for emergency medical treatment. The officer's wife was taken to intensive care in critical condition after the blast, suffering severe injuries alongside the fatal attack on her husband. Preliminary information suggested a homemade explosive device detonated inside the car, with investigators examining the destroyed vehicle and the surrounding blast site. The blast wave deformed the driver's door and damaged vehicles parked nearby, according to Militani, scattering debris across the surrounding area. The report said both the officer and his wife suffered devastating leg injuries, with local reports saying the explosion tore off both of their legs. Much of the housing around the blast site was bought by Russia's defense ministry, creating a neighborhood heavily populated by service personnel and their families. The homes were reportedly purchased for military personnel and their families, making the location a sensitive area connected to Russia's armed forces. Russia's investigative committee opened a criminal case following the deadly incident, though its initial statement described the event as a vehicle fire. The attack follows other deadly explosions involving Russian military figures, as attacks and suspected sabotage incidents continue to unsettle Moscow's rear areas. Earlier in August, the maker of Russia's Upiri FPV drones was critically injured in a blast, striking a figure connected to the production of battlefield unmanned systems. A Russian propaganda Telegram channel author was reportedly killed in that explosion, widening the apparent target list beyond military industry personnel. The St. Petersburg blast comes 2 days after CIA Director John Ratcliffe's mystery visit to Moscow, where he reportedly held meetings with Russian officials. Additionally, Ukraine struck Russian-controlled Donetsk on August 26, injuring several people in an attack that came before the St. Petersburg explosion. The real purpose behind CIA Director John Ratcliffe's surprise Russia visit appears to have been revealed through U.S. media reports. According to the Wall Street Journal, Trump's intelligence chief traveled to Moscow to warn Russia against launching an attack on any NATO member state. The visit followed U.S. intelligence assessments suggesting that Putin could attempt a limited assault to test NATO's collective resolve. Those assessments indicated that a potential Russian move could come within the next few years, with some concerns focusing on the possibility of escalation as early as this fall. A possible Russian operation could range from a major cyber attack to a small-scale military incursion, rather than an immediate full-scale war with NATO. Reports suggest that any such action could involve one of NATO's Baltic member states, located on Russia's northwestern frontier. Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania are seen as the most vulnerable potential flashpoints, given their geography, proximity to Russia, and central role in NATO's eastern defenses. Moscow has repeatedly threatened Western governments backing Ukraine, portraying their military assistance to Kyiv as direct involvement in the war. Under NATO's Article 5 principle, an armed attack against one alliance member is considered an attack against every member, meaning a strike on a Baltic state could trigger a collective response. U.S. officials are also reportedly concerned that Western ammunition shortages caused by the Iran war may influence Putin's calculations about NATO's ability to respond quickly. During his Moscow visit, Ratcliffe also urged Russian officials to reduce their military and economic support for Iran, including transfers of weapons and defense technology. U.S. President Donald Trump has finally addressed CIA Chief John Ratcliffe's visit to Moscow on August 25. amid growing speculation over the secretive trip. The U.S. president spoke to the New York Post about why John Ratcliffe made the surprise visit to Moscow and what it was meant to achieve. Trump was asked whether Ratcliffe's visit was linked to ongoing Russia-UK tensions or whether the CIA chief discussed Iran-related issues. Trump hinted that Ratcliffe's Moscow visit instead revolved around efforts to reach a peace deal and end the Russia-Ukraine war. The U.S. president said, and I quote, "Well, none of the above. He's there, on very sort of semi-routine. I hate to disappoint people. We would like to see the war with Ukraine end. That's a war that would have never started. If I were president, you wouldn't have had the war with Ukraine, and you wouldn't have had 25 million people coming into our country like they did. Just come in like we were a bunch of fools. It was so sad. John Ratcliffe is a fantastic guy. He's the head of the CIA, and he is not in there for any of the things that you said. Now something may come out, out of it. We're working very hard to get that war ended, and frankly, they both want to see it ended at this point." End quote. On August 25th, CIA Director John Ratcliffe made a surprise visit to Moscow to meet with Russian intelligence officials, according to reports. Ratcliffe's visit marks the first known trip by a CIA chief since 2021, before the Russia-Ukraine war began and tensions dramatically escalated. Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov, on August 26, confirmed that Russian President Vladimir Putin did not meet with Ratcliffe during the visit.
Has Putin already been briefed on the outcome of the meeting with the CIA head John Ratcliffe? Were the results positive? Could you clarify what level of contact this involved? That is, did our SVR head, the FSB head, take part in the meetings?
All I can tell you is that there were contacts through the security services. I can tell you that there were no meetings with the Russian president. And that is all I can say on this matter. Of course, President Putin is briefed on everything immediately. Contacts through the special services are a positive development, a positive process. These contacts often continue even during the most difficult periods in bilateral relations. Our president also spoke about this. However, it is still too early to say to what extent this will affect the overall process of bringing our bilateral relations out of the deepest crisis in which they currently find themselves. Ratcliffe had no contacts with the Kremlin. I cannot tell you at this stage whether any further arrangements regarding contacts have been made. I cannot comment on matters concerning other agencies. As far as the Kremlin is concerned, no contacts are planned so far. It is beyond doubt that Ukraine is losing the conflict. The situation on the front lines clearly demonstrates this. That is the first point. It is also beyond doubt and equally obvious that former participants in the corruption scheme, having left office, are now beginning to denounce their former partners in corruption. Political, or, I would say, quasi-political, turmoil is taking place within the Kiev regime, and it is intensifying. The Kiev regime is crumbling from within. It is losing the stability that has always left much to be desired. And the fact that Europeans do not want to notice this is a grave mistake on their part.
Switzerland has acknowledged that there are no grounds for the release of frozen Russian assets. Could you please tell us whether the Kremlin sees any signs that Europeans are returning to the Russian interpretation of international law, and whether Switzerland's position could be the first step towards the unfreezing of our assets? You've sound.
Who acknowledged it? I just don't have that information. Who exactly did it?
It was the Swiss State Secretariat for Economic Affairs.
Here, we need to. To be honest, I'm not familiar with this decision or this statement, so I can't tell you anything.
Reports describe the trip as Ratcliffe's first publicly known official visit to Russia since taking charge of the CIA. Ratcliffe has maintained contact with Sergei Naryshkin, the head of Russia's Foreign Intelligence Service, or SVR. Naryshkin had earlier indicated that he was willing to meet Ratcliffe as contacts continued between the two intelligence services. Peskov said Ratcliffe's Moscow visit involved contacts between Russian and American security services. Ukraine was reportedly informed in advance that a US delegation would travel to Russia for talks. However, Kiev was reportedly not initially told that CIA Director John Ratcliffe will be part of the visiting American delegation. The United States reportedly asked Ukraine not to launch strikes on Moscow or St. Petersburg during Ratcliffe's visit. US envoys Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner were also expected to visit Ukraine this week, but their planned trip was postponed. A source denied earlier reports suggesting that intensified Russian attacks on Ukraine had caused the delay in the visit. The developments come as Washington and Moscow increasingly pursue direct bilateral contacts despite the continuing deadlock in peace negotiations.